Hello, I'm Nick of Books Are Sick, and welcome to this video where we are going to do a book unhaul. This is a new trend. I actually don't know if this is a new trend. I'm kind of new here, but it's a trend that I've just seen people do recently where instead of sharing book hauls, they share book unhauls where they go through their bookshelves and pick out all the books that they don't have any interest in reading anymore, books they didn't like, and books that they have multiple copies of that they can get rid of. So that's what I did. I thought that was a great idea. My bookshelves are getting a little full, so the idea of having some more space back here is exciting, and there ended up being quite a few books that I can move on from. So I'm going to share them all with you here. Now, a lot of these are books that I do own multiple copies of. So for those ones, I'm going to share both copies, and I'll tell you which one I'm keeping, which one I'm getting rid of, and we're just going to jump into it here. I think this is a great idea. Honestly, I'm trying to own less stuff, and this will be a great start for me to do that. That and the library. Library is going to be key. Surprisingly, there will be quite a few Stephen King books in here because I do have multiple copies of a lot of those. But yeah, some books in here that I just lost interest in and some books that I just didn't like as well. So we're going to jump into it with the first one here. And this is actually one of my favorite books, and that is The Shining. So this is the copy that I read, actually, and I honestly don't love it. You know, it's a newer, it's got the red room door and whatever. This is the copy that I read. And then afterwards I found this copy here that I just think is so cool. I love that so much. It's a little banged up and everything, but I love this. So this one is going to go. I'm going to keep this one for The Shining. If you haven't read The Shining, such a great book. It really holds up. It's probably, I guess, what, 40 years old at this point? I might be way off base there. 40, 50 years old. I'm not sure. It's an old story, but it's a great story. It actually was one of my favorite movies, and I kind of expected to not like the book as much as the movie, and the complete opposite happened. I now like the book a whole lot more than I like the movie. Still love the movie though. This is a book that I've just completely lost interest in reading. This is a Brandon Sanderson book, and it is Elantris. I found this at a thrift store, and I was excited because I'm like, oh, Brandon Sanderson, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I've got so much Brandon Sanderson to read. I got to read the whole Way of Kings. There's four, I don't know, what do you call a four pack, and that's going to take me forever, honestly. And I'd want to read Mistborn Era 2. And I think Brandon Sanderson himself has said that he's kind of grown a lot since he wrote this book. This is probably 10, 15 years old at this point. And so I honestly just really don't know if I'm ever realistically going to get to this one. So this one can go. I'm sure there's someone out there that will appreciate it more than I do. So that is going to go. Another one, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is not one that I've read yet, but I, for some reason, own two copies of this exact same book. So there's no need for that. So I'm going to get rid of one. I'm excited to read the Fifth Season, though, and I've got all three, actually, so I can read the whole trilogy. I am excited to read some N.K. Jemisin. She seems super cool. I watched a bit of her masterclass, and she was awesome. This is a book that I bought and I was excited for. My wife and I were going to read it together, and she read it and she really didn't like it. And whenever my wife doesn't like something, it's pretty rare in the book world. So when she didn't like this, I was like, okay, well, I'm probably never going to read that now. And that is The Book Eaters by Sunyadin. This is yeah, I thought the back sounded really interesting. I thought the title was really cool, but I've since seen a few other people too say that this really was not for them. And with the amount of books that I have on my TBR, I don't really have time for books that I'm not excited about. So I lost interest in this one. I'm gonna give that to someone who will appreciate it, because I'm sure there are quite a few people that will. I am going to go with Eyes of the Dragon. This is an easy one. So this is the copy that I read. This is just a mass market paperback. Really good book, by the way, Eyes of the Dragon. Pure fantasy book, kind of unlike anything Stephen King's really ever written before. There's nothing else to it. It's just pure fantasy. But I also have this copy, and this is a first edition, and I mean, not really comparable. This one's staying, this one's going. So I'm excited to be able to gift someone the gift of Eyes of the Dragon, because that story is really, really cool. This is I own two hardcovers of this one. This is another Stephen King book here. This is Bag of Bones. I'll put them side by side here. I am going to keep this one with the teal border here. This one someone just randomly gifted to me, and I just thought that was so nice. So I'm keeping this one, and I also kind of just like that a little bit more than this one. It's the same cover. This one just looks a little more special, so keeping that one. I'm excited for Bag of Bones. It's a story of a writer who's dealing with the loss of his wife, and I think he's just struggling to get back into being himself or something like that. And it sounds right up my alley. I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, moving along. We have this book here. This is Catch Me If You Can. You've probably seen the movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Probably, it would be a top 10 for me. I've seen it probably 30 plus times. It's like my comfort movie. I watch it all the time. And so I was like, oh my God, I bet the book is fantastic. And I started reading the book and it was really good. And then, not to like bum anybody out, but someone reached out and they were like, oh man, I really enjoyed that book until I found out like a lot of it was fabricated, blah, blah, blah. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it planted a seed in my brain and I was just kind of having a hard time getting back into it. But I do have to say, don't take that with any sort of punch. You know what I mean? If you think you might like this, please go pick it up and read it, because I was really enjoying it. It's just, how that happens sometimes. Someone says something and it just ruins something forever. That's kind of what happened to me. But yeah, what I read was quite good. But I'm gonna sail away with that one. This is one that I was going to get rid of, but I'm actually going to keep, but I was going to share it anyways. And that is this copy of The Stand. This is from the 70s. This is a paperback. And this is the one that was originally released that is cut down. It is a lot shorter. And I'm kind of tempted to read that version of The Stand at some point. So I want to have a copy of it on deck. So I'm going to keep it. But I was going to get rid of it because I have like 3 copies of The Stand, which is unnecessary. Very unnecessary. But I love The Stand. It's like such a sick book, honestly. If you haven't read The Stand, read it. It's really good. Okay, this next one is a book I haven't read yet. It's Jack Kerouac's On the Road, a classic. I have this, what do you call these? These are like the mass-produced ones that they do. They all have like similar covers. Do you know what I'm trying to say? There's like a whole bunch of classic books that have the same sort of style of a cover. I found this one at a thrift store, and I don't know why, I just like this one more. So I'm going to give this one away. And a lot of these books, the ones that I'm giving away, most of them I think I'm going to put in our little free library. We have a little free library on our front lawn, and so I would imagine that's where most of these are going to end up, because why not? Next up, we have... Oh, let me just move these around here. So, Mistborn, one of my favorite books ever, one of my favorite trilogies ever. I've one of the biggest fantasy things that I was introduced to when I first started reading it. I loved it so much. I really, really did. This is the copy that I read. This is kind of very... blah. Honestly, it's a little water damage too, if I'm honest. And so I'm going to get rid of that one because I do own this hard copy of it, and I have all 3 books in this in this release. So, I mean, you know what I mean? Pretty easy decision there, honestly. So that was, it's nice when decisions are easy. This is a Chuck Klosterman book called The 90s that I'm going to give away because I really like Chuck Klosterman. I've liked all of his books. I like Fargo Rock City. I like the other one that's a title I'm not really sure I'm allowed to say on here. But I've always really enjoyed Chuck Klosterman. But for some reason, the 90s was just wasn't hitting the same for me. So I read about half of it, and I don't really think I'm ever going to pick it up again. So I'm going to give that one away to hopefully a Chuck Klosterman fan that will like it. Now, this is one where, okay, so The Wastelands is book 3 in the Dark Tower series, and I own, is this all the ones I own? I think so. So I own this one. This is the one that I read. I found that at a thrift store. I have this one. That's part of the big box set release that they did. I have this one that I was fortunate enough to find while thrifting. This is a pretty special edition one. It's got this like plastic safety stuff on it and everything. And then I also have this mass market paperback here. So obviously there's really no need for me to own that many copies of The Wastelands, even though it is such an incredible book. A lot of people say it's their favorite Dark Tower book. It's probably the most popular answer for favorite Dark Tower book. But for me, The Drawing of the Three, I liked a smidge more. But The Wastelands was incredible. However, I'm going to get rid of this mass market paperback because I really have no need to have that many. I'm obviously keeping this one. I'm going to keep this one because I've got the other ones that are part of that box set. And I'm going to get rid of this one, which I'm actually a little bit bummed about because this is a big floppy book. But again, I want to make space, and I don't need 4 copies of the same book. So I'm going to get rid of those 2. Okay, moving on. This one might surprise a lot of people for those that don't already know, but I was really excited to read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So excited, in fact, that I bought the 10th year anniversary edition or 15th year anniversary edition that is such a cool hardcover. And then I bought these reading copies here because I was convinced, I'm like, I'm gonna love this book. I know I'm gonna love this book, so why not just go crazy and get all this stuff. Turns out I read 3/4 of The Name of the Wind. I really gave it everything I had, and it just wasn't for me. I wasn't connecting to it. I found the main character kind of annoying, and the story itself was just, I was like, I don't know. It just, I know it's a really popular fantasy book and people really love it. It just was not for me. It was not for me. So I'm going to be getting rid of this copy of The Name of the Wind. Hopefully someone that picks that up is going to be really psyched and really pumped to read that. And I also am going to be getting rid of the sequel, The Wise Man's Fear. The only benefit to getting rid of these is that I will never have to live through the pain of the third book never being released. You know, maybe it still will be released, but I know that Name of the Wind fans are just, I think it's Kingkiller Chronicles is what this series is called. I know they're just like, you know, they're depressed. They've just given up. And at least I don't have to live that pain because I didn't like it. So I'm going to be getting rid of those two. Next up, another one of my favorite books ever is Pet Sematary. This is the copy that I read. It's similar to the Shining copy. It's just meh, you know, like a mass. I don't know. Don't love it. And I have this first edition here of Pet Sematary. So obviously I will be keeping that. And that one's going to be going. I've said it a billion times, but if you haven't read Pet Sematary, it truly is a very interesting exploration of grief and characters. And oh, the ding happened. I thought I was going to make it a whole episode without a ding, but what are you going to do? Anyways, Pet Sematary, truly fantastic. Don't sleep on Pet Sematary. Here's a book that I just didn't like, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. Is that it? Yeah. This is, I didn't finish this book. I read about 25% of it. Just not for me. Just straight up not for me. I can't, it's just, for those that have read it, maybe you can give me a bit of an idea as to whether you liked it or not, and if you did, why, and if you didn't, why. But there's just something about I hate to you just use the word vibe, but something about the vibe of this book was just not grabbing me. So gonna be getting rid of Bunny. Also, similarly, The Troop by Nick Cutter. This is a book I was actually really excited to read. I love horror books, and this one had been really pumped up, so I was excited to read it. Read half of it, and it just kind of with Name of the Wind, I was just like, I don't really care about any of these characters. I finding the story kind of boring and kind of dull, so I stopped. And I don't really realistically think I'll ever pick that one back up, so that one's gonna go as well. Okay, finally, we've only got 2 more here. You probably could see this one. This is The Fault in Our Stars. This is a really truly fantastic book. I really enjoyed this. Basically, this is one that I found while thrifting, and this is one that my friend Kayuli Rare Books sent me that is signed. So keeping the signed one, getting rid of the non-signed one, obviously. That is a book that you see everywhere. So you know, if you haven't read it, it really is good. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll laugh again, then you'll cry again. You might puke a little bit. I don't know. Lastly here, we have one of the greatest sequels of all time. We've already talked about The Shining. The sequel, Dr. Sleep, is incredible. If you've read The Shining, if you've even watched The Shining and you're like, I don't know if I want to read it, just jump into Dr. Sleep. You don't need to read The Shining to get into Dr. Sleep if you've seen the movie. This is a really awesome sequel. And I've got this again, this is the copy I read. It's got so obviously that kind of gives away that we're following Danny Torrance in this story. It's, you know, 20, 30 years later or so. And this is a hard copy that I found after I had read it. This is so cool. I don't know if you can see her face in there. That is just really neat to me. So obviously keeping that one. Gonna move on from that one. And those, my friends, are the books that I am unhauling. So pretty decent little stack. I've definitely made some space on my shelf. So I feel good about that because they were getting pretty cramped. And yeah, that's all I got. Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye.